Alrighty, hopefully everybody is on now. Hi everybody, my name's Jade. I'm an AFLW athlete for the Brisbane Lions AFLW team. I'm also a member of the Our Watch Changemakers program, which is a pilot program for AFL and AFLW athletes looking to deepen our knowledge of equality and respect in our sport. And I'm also a passionate advocate for gender equality. Thank you everyone for joining us today as we look to explore experiences for women and girls in sport, positive ones. Today's webinar has been organised by Our Watch, the national leading primary prevention organisation in Australia working towards the prevention of violence against women. Before we begin today, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Our Watch acknowledges the traditional owners of the land across Australia on which we work and live and are joining from today. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, peoples past and present, and we value Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories, cultures, and knowledge. We're very lucky to be joined by Nikki and Belinda to support the webinar as Auslan interpreters. So thank you, Nikki and Belinda. Our webinar today, Play Your Way, will explore the ways in which we can all contribute to support the positive participation of women and girls at all levels and roles within sport. We've got some amazing panellists, including professional athletes, club presidents, and sports administrators who will shine light on what it means to support women and girls to participate in sport. The webinar will be broken into two sections today, each with its own panel discussion. The first of our panels will focus on the athlete experience, exploring the panelist journey through their sport. We'll also identify some of the barriers and the opportunities to navigate these, as well as actions or moments that have positively contributed to their experience so the audience can take away. Our second panel will look more towards admin and system change and will include a few sports presidents, professional referees, and sports administrators as we explore how these women found their ways to their roles and their experiences in the sport community more broadly. To get us started with our first panel, I'm excited to be joined by some incredible athletes. We've got Rebekah Miller, or Beck, who is an inaugural member of the Richmond Tigers team that joined the AFLW in 2020. Beck has played 6 seasons in the yellow and black as a key defender. Thank you, Beck. We're also joined by Karina Brown. Karina is recently retired NRLW athlete. Before her NRLW career, she was a founding member of the Burleigh Bears women's rugby team and a premiership winner with this team also, might we add. She is a 2-time World Cup champion with the Gillaroos in 2013 and 2017 before becoming an inaugural NRLW until her retirement last year. She is also a social inclusion ambassador for the NRL. Welcome, Karina. And finally, Tess Whelan, who became the first Australian to compete in the B1 category internationally, where she played at the International Blind Tennis Association World Championships in Italy last year, and works at Our Watch to navigate the intersection of gender-based violence and women and girls with disability. Thank you, Tess. So to start us off, a huge welcome to all of our panelists. To set the scene and learn a bit more about each of you, can we ask you guys, and can you share with us a bit why you got into your sport in the first place and what were those initial experiences like? Beck, we'll start with you.
I'd love to kick it off. Great introduction. Thanks, Jade. And so great to be here. And yeah, really excited to also hear what Karina and Tess have to say. But in terms of, I guess, why I got into sport and why I've stuck with it since, I'd sort of put it down to 3 factors. And number one being connection with my family and friends, whether spectating or playing. It's a great connector of people. And I had an older brother, 4 years older than me, who dragged me out in the backyard to play every sport underneath the sun possible and started my love for sport way back then. And growing up in Wagga Wagga, a town so nice I have it twice, there wasn't much else to do besides sport. So that sort of helped drive me into sport as well. And I guess post high school as a young woman, the physical benefits sport offered me is something which kept me going. And then at the crux of it, sport unites people of all different cultures and backgrounds. And if it wasn't for sport, I wouldn't have met half the amazing people I have during my life. So that's one. Second one, probably the sense of achievement within a team when you put together a game plan and train week in, week out and execute it. That's pretty satisfying. And even on the flip side, if you don't get the result on the weekend, getting that feedback of what's worked well and what hasn't is still quite a sense of achievement as well and satisfying. And then thirdly, I would say, which I think a lot of us can relate to as humans because I'm good at it, so we all like to do what we're good at. And my first year of footy in the under-12s, I was the only girl in the team. I think there was one other girl in the league at that stage. And after that year, I couldn't actually play with the boys because there were no pathways back in my day. But I actually won the under 12 league best and fairest, which is pretty cool for a 12-year-old girl at that time. But I remember after winning that award, I had two dads come up to me and say, you only won that award because you're a girl. And one of those dads, his son was the runner-up best and fairest of that award. And I'd love to see what level of footy he's playing today, you know? So, and in my current team, Richmond Tigers, I'm far from the best player and far from the best player in the AFLW, but just that continuous improvement to try and get better day in, day out is something which drives me. So yeah, that connection to family and friends, sense of achievement, and because I'm half good at it, I'd say.
Half good is an understatement, Beck. You're incredible. And I'm sure those under 12 boys' dads would be very jealous. Karina, I might shoot to you. So what got you into sport in the first place? What was it like for you?
Hi everyone. Yeah, great to be here. Beck, we have very similar stories. So my dad was AFL boy, my mum played netball. So from a young age, dad was teaching me how to kick a ball. My mum was teaching me how to throw a netball. So I just love sport naturally. And I remember mum put me in piano lessons and I would pretend to be sick each time because I just wasn't interested at all. So I guess that's where I figured out I love sport and I was passionate about it. I got to play with the boys. So I would play sport with the boys all day, every day in the out of bounds area, tackling them. I was always the only girl playing, but there would be two captains and I would be the first one picked in any of the sides. And then I played the under 12 boys team for 1 year and I loved it. And then, yeah, I turned 13 and there was no pathways anymore. And I was really confused that people were telling me girls can't play rugby league. And I was like, but I'm living it. I am playing rugby league and I'm beating the boys. So I don't know how you say that girls can't play. And that all really confused me as a 12-year-old girl. I just couldn't understand the world and how it was, what was acceptable and what wasn't. And then I just went and did touch footy for the rest of my time through high school. As kids, you're pretty resilient. You just, okay, I'm not allowed to play rugby league. I'll get on with it and do other sports, which I loved. I touch footy. And then I was 21 and yeah, I found that there was actually a pathway for girls and women in rugby league, which was really exciting. And I got to sink my teeth into it and have a really amazing 14-year career. But like Beck said, I just love being part of a team environment. I love the strategy side, the competition, taking what you learn when you lose and also what you learn when you win, but that feeling when you win as well, that I think sport's funny. It's either complete devastation or complete elation. It's not sort of an in between. But I mean, above all, and what I promote to anyone that plays a sport is you do it because you love it and because it's fun. And anything after that, rep sides or playing NRLW, AFLW, that's just a bonus. So yeah, that's me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Karina. I can see the similarities between AFLW and NRLW already. Tess, you're a bit of a more interesting case here. How did you get into sport and what was it like when you first started playing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, everyone. And I think I can definitely relate to a lot of what's already been said. I think for me, the first motivation was definitely because my friends were doing it. It's really simple, but really true. And I definitely had mixed results uh, throughout my life, but as a young girl, which was particularly challenging. But I found netball was my local netball club, which I wanted to play for because that's where all my friends played. Didn't even really understand what netball was, but understood I wanted to spend time with my friends. They were more worried about me being a legal risk and my parents suing them when I got injured rather than me playing with my friends. And then right down the other end of the scale, switched to athletics after 12 months and had a flawless experience. Never won a race, unsurprisingly. Never flew further than anyone else, but participation was the focus and no one questioned anything. No one ever said that I shouldn't be there or that I was that never thought about it any more than, well, this kid is just here to have fun with her mates like everyone else. and yeah, really had a positive experience there. Went through the same kind of experience that a lot of teenage girls do, where I kind of stopped participating in organised sport. And then when I was 21, and was able to travel and be a bit more independent, started participating in para sports and blind sports, like goalball, for example, which is a Paralympic sport, and really started to explore that high performance side of sport, and understood what it meant to get the most out of myself, which was really motivating for me, and also be part of a team and work towards something. I really relate to that having fun in a team, and whether you win or lose, you walk away with a smile on your face because you did it with your best mates. So yeah, that's my story, and why I'm still doing it.
That's incredible, Tess. And to have such contrasting experiences from netball and then into athletics, and then to all those years later find your way into tennis is incredible. And all three of you have mentioned that the barriers, and there's periods of times where you went without playing your sport, or you went away from it, or you had to play touch football, or you couldn't play contact sport, or just no sport altogether. I just wanted to ask, like, some of the barriers we've obviously just mentioned, but did you see how clubs, or how as you navigated them personally, or you saw them addressed, that you think you could share with the group, if there was anything in particular that stood out in your experiences across there? Karina, I might ask you first this time.
Yeah, well, I think the barrier was obviously accessibility, being 12 years old and then not being able to play anymore. But I think since the inception of NRLW, AFLW, the Matildas, it created a big demand for young girls wanting to play our sports, which then they go back to the clubs and they almost, demand the clubs, hey, we need all girls and all women's teams. So we've seen the participation across all women's sports just soaring. And that's because now girls can access it, which is absolutely, incredible. And we've still got a little way to go, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. I have some teammates at the Titans, they're coming in to the team at 17, 18 years old. They've been playing since they're 12, and they're guns, and they know the game way better than I do. They're lifting heavier than me. It's like, it's kind of embarrassing. They're coming, they're doing like this 80-kilo bench press because I never lifted a weight. I didn't see a weight until I was 23. So it's really inspiring, and the talent is going to keep getting better and better. But I think the next stage and the barrier for women now is being full-time, at least in NRLW. It is so hard for our female athletes in NRLW space. We play maybe 6 months of the year, and we train night, so from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. Then you play on the weekend, sorry. And so it's really challenging because they expect like an elite athlete performance and time, but we don't have that during the day. Like you go to work from 8 till 4, and then you go and do your sport because you don't have enough money otherwise. So I feel like, that's a big barrier for women. And that's probably the next stage is imagine how good the product would be if you could work on your craft full time. I think, you'll definitely see a sharp incline. And I noticed it in the rugby sevens, actually, back when they won their gold medal in Rio, and they turned into a full-time program a few years prior, and then they win a gold medal. Like, that's not a coincidence. And that the skill of that game in the final was just leaps and bounds. That just perfect. And I always, when I watched that game, thought, imagine if our game could get to that point, how much better it would be. And it's already a good product. But that's probably the same for you, Beck, in AFL. Don't know if I can pass over, but
yeah, no, go for it. I was going to lead into Beck anyway, because as you mentioned, it's that part-time piece. But back to your original point on how there is now actual pathways for young girls to play. Like we've got the same in the AFLW. There's girls coming through who have played since they were 6 years old, and they are freaks. They are so good. And Beck, I'll throw to you to touch a bit more onto the AFLW side of things and what you've seen. But I'm assuming it'd be quite similar to what Karina's just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely quite similar. And yeah, the young guns coming through are scary. So I'm trying to hang on and get as many games in as possible before they kick me out of my spot, essentially. But I think a couple of barriers I thought of leading this webinar was, I touched on it in my first question, but being the only girl on a team, which Karina also experienced too, like if people who are part of the community clubs and organisations, if you can try and create a girls only team or a girls league, or even if you can't create that, just try and get one other girl to pair up with that girl in that team and just make that girl feel normal for liking sport and wanting to participate in sport is a real, I guess, opportunity to try and keep young girls in sport and stop that dropout that we see with all the statistics and whatnot. But I remember I was 13, 14, went to a cricket session for the first time, and I sat in the car with mum and watched the guys muck around in a net session, and I was so nervous being the only girl. And I was like, Mum, can we come back next week? I'm too nervous. I don't want to get the car. And anyway, came back next week, got out of the car, took my kit bag, participated in the session, and had a great season with the boys and loved it. But I just wonder if I had have seen a girl in that first session, would I have got out of the car? So that's definitely an opportunity. I think another one, a bit sort of, I guess, with a wider view, but we have amazing females across many clubs and organisations who influence and impact so many different things within a club. So to recognise and respect them with, a stand after them, or a club, the change room named after them, or a gala day, or just a plaque with their name and story so it can be celebrated year on year, and sort of tell that woman's story from a wider perspective and illustrate to the people coming and going from that club the place that a woman has in that club is really important, a really big opportunity. Again, in round one, Richmond Tigers, we played Sydney Swans up at the beautiful North Sydney Oval this year to start our campaign. And the day before a game, we do a captain's run, which is where you do a light skills and run session on the field you're about to play on the next day. And we'll take it in a beautiful historic ground at North Sydney Oval, and there were so many different stands. And one of the stands was named Molly Dive, which had us all really excited. It was like, a female stand? Like, this is really, really cool. So after our captain's run, we get on the bus and we Google Molly Dive and find out she's an amazing cricketer and a scientist. So I think that's a really big opportunity to spotlight women and their contribution to clubs and community organisations, I would say. So yeah, that and girls teams and girls leagues would be the best opportunities, I think, moving forward.
That's incredible that they've got that stand, and similar to what Karina was saying, is like, you can't be what you can't see. So having these people in these spotlights and celebrating them, or even just having a name there, leads people to Google it and see what's there, look at their story, celebrate their story. So no, I love it. I love it, Beck. And we need more stands. So Tess, I'll ask you as well. Obviously, you mentioned in your intro the way you kind of navigated it, and you loved when there was no barriers with the athletics compared to the netball, and then also having this time away from sport, and then coming back in later in life. Do you think what do you think in that period where you were away from sport? What do you think might have brought you back in sooner?
Yeah, I think disability sport has been moving in the same direction as female participation in sport, and the opportunities available to 10-year-olds now versus when I was a 10-year-old is incredible. I think attitudes are always going to be the biggest barrier, right? And it's hard to quantify attitudes, and it's hard to explain, that Karina and Beck have done a really great job of explaining what that actually feels like, and when there's attitudes, and even if that attitude is indifference. I think indifference is harder to deal with than outright kind of discrimination, for lack of a better word, because if someone's indifferent to you, you don't feel included. And I think that's huge. I think in the disability sport space, there's still a lot of women are still training with men, and a lot of the time are still maybe the only female present at those training sessions, and that barrier is huge, and some of those strategies around just having one other female there, and the difference that makes is incredible. So I think that's a great tip. I think the other thing is I find it really interesting because a lot of these barriers are quite similar, right? So the skill acquisition is huge within disability sports. So attitudes from teachers and schools and parents and sporting clubs to teach ball skills. Just because a kid can't see, doesn't have 20/20 vision or is in a wheelchair, does not mean that they should not be participating in PE classes, does not mean that they should not be learning to catch and throw a ball. You would be shocked at how many people my age in their 20s, they don't have ball skills, they don't know how to run. It seems illogical, but people who at a cricket camp a couple of months ago, we were doing sprints, and I used to be able to see a little bit more. And I obviously did athletics as well, so I was doing the sprints completely fine. And then afterwards, it was really interesting. The coach was saying to me, "You really enjoyed that, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, it was really tough because all the other girls in your group actually, they couldn't really run. Like, their running technique wasn't even not great. It was obvious that no one had ever taught them to run, that no one had ever taught them to run freely. These types of really basic things, and it all comes back to attitudes. And I think that having those attitudes where people are open to listening and open to learning and open to thinking outside the box is really important.
Yeah, Tess, and I'd like to ask a follow-up question on that. Do you think these attitudes are slowly changing in the right direction, or do you think there's still major barriers in place now compared to when you were a child, like going through primary school, maybe not being taught these skills that you should definitely be taught, but maybe got excluded from? Like, do you think it's getting better, or is it still far away from where it needs to be?
I would say that in my experience and in my friends' experiences, the key people are really important, and someone within that ecosystem of teachers, parents, coaches, community clubs, somewhere having someone who believes in and has that belief in teaching these skills, and that whoever this child is, they can fully participate. I think that is the key, and I think there are more and more of those people in the world, in Australia, who have that understanding and that belief. So I think that by default that is increasing, but there are when you're relying on someone in the inner network of that child or that adult who's acquired disability, understanding that, or having that kind of mindset, systematic change is always better, right? Systematic
Absolutely.
education is always the most ideal way to go.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure we can dive into some more of that later in our second panel, and hopefully get some administrators on board to help. But, Rebekah and Karina, so I just want to go back to AFL and NRL for a second, and then we'll come back to you, Tess. So they're AFL and NRL, very high contact sports, and they've traditionally been shaped in an unfortunate way that it's too physical for women by this gender stereotype. And can you just share how your experience, I guess, on how you feel about this, and how in your own journey, what it means to you that you can now see women and girls in visible roles, like athletes like yourselves, that are changing this stereotype from, I guess, a boys' game into now a sport that is for everybody. Whoever wants to go first, we'll go. Beck, you're up.
Brilliant. No, well, firstly, I actually love watching rugby league. I was brought up on that sport rather than AFL, and just watching men's or women's games, I just love the physicality of it. I don't think I could play it personally. I am a little bit too skinny, I think. I think my body shape suited to AFL a bit more.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
But no, I guess in terms of that stereotype, you sort of mentioned before, Jade, you can't be what you can't see. So to see the faces of young boys and young girls at open trainings or at the games, like they're the ones we're playing for. I think, yeah, you cop a few critical comments from older people and, you know, women shouldn't play this sport, or NRL's not for women, or AFL's not for women. But we're not playing for those people. We're playing for the young generation who just see footy is footy. They say AFLW, it's footy. AFL men's, it's just footy, essentially. So, as you said, yeah, you can't be what you can't see. And I know so many people, I'm sure Karina's the same too, athletes around our age, they grew up wanting to be the first female in the men's competition. And because there was no AFLW, NRLW, but now that's not even a thought for young girls coming through. They can be an AFLW superstar, they can be an NRLW superstar, which is really, really cool stuff to see. And I think I for one, am really appreciative of, I guess, the years of hard work in the gym and on the track. And Harriet Cordner, who's hosting the second panel, she actually coined one of my nicknames, Spaggers, for spaghetti arms back in the day. But now the girls have upgraded me to rigatoni. I've got a little bit more muscle on my arms now, which is, yeah, I guess a good nod to the hard work that's been put in. But in the off season, when I walk into a gym and know where the free weights are, what machine to use, like, it's so empowering. So I think if people are sitting sort of on the edge of whether to get into the gym or not, like, do it. Like, definitely pay for some PT sessions or take someone who knows the right technique and empower you that way. But it's yeah, to be fit and strong is really powerful and empowering. I think Iona Ma, that USA Rugby female star, her mantra is pretty much strong, beautiful. What is it? It's something like strong is powerful, beautiful. I can't quite remember it. Strong is beautiful, strong is powerful, or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And she just won an SB recently and used that platform to promote positive body image, which is, we need more of it for young girls and women across the world. So women of all different shapes and sizes, like, it's okay. Like, our bodies do different things and do them well. So to have that message spread across the world is really, really, really important. So yeah, but I'll handball to you, Karina, now to add on to that.
Handball, I don't know how to catch a handball. Nah, good on your riggers. You summed it up really well. I've definitely seen a massive attitude shift from when I started playing 14 years ago to now. If I had $1 for every time I now hear a man tell me, "Oh my God, I love and I prefer watching the girls' games. You guys hit harder than the men." If I was getting $1, I wouldn't have had to work the whole time that I played, because I'd be that loaded. But I love hearing that. That's like my favorite comment. And it's not about girls versus boys. I just love that the attitudes has shifted now, where they love watching us play. And to me, it's all relative, right? Like, me running full speed into Millie Boyle versus Jade Campbell running full speed into Patrick Carrigan. It's relative. It's the same outcome. We both get smashed, but then we get up and we keep going. So yeah, it's good that attitude has shifted. And like you said, Beck, what I love the most now is being sidelined. Well, when I was playing, and all the young boys actually coming to the sideline to get the signatures of not the male heroes, it's the female heroes. It's Isabel Kelly, Kezzy Apps, Georgia Hale, all the greats of the game, and they're down there just, want, exactly like you said, footy's footy at the end of the day. I had a little boy come up to me after we won the World Cup. He was probably 7, and he said, "Oh, I want to be a Jillaroo one day." And that moment just blew my mind. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to have the heart to tell him he can't do it, because you can be a Jillaroo one day, mate. You just set your mind to it, because I didn't think I would ever be a Jillaroo. I didn't even know, women's footy existed. So yeah, I love the attitude shift. And I think we've moved quite far away from where it used to be when I started, which was, chicks don't play footy and they're no good at it. But also, when I first started 14 years ago, there was no resources in the game. So they were expecting something from me that I couldn't, produce, because, like I said, I'd never lifted a weight. No one had shown me before. We didn't have resources poured into the game where you could get better, you could build muscle, you could have proper training, proper nutrition, all the rest. So it's great that we're finally getting access to those resources, and you're seeing how good we are.
No, that is beautiful. Like, you can clearly see that across both sports there, we're challenging those stereotypes, and to see, like, as you said, young boys now seeing women in sport as normal, and seeing that on TV, and being aware that they haven't never lived in a world that was this was just a boys' game. So by the time that they are in their 20s and 30s, like that's just normal to them. Where these probably the older generations are the ones that you see all those horrible comments online and stuff. But in 30 years' time, they're not going to be the ones with the opinions anymore. It's going to be these young boys that have grown up, and girls that have grown up having both women and men on the screen. So it's beautiful. I love it. And I love that they are the ones at the side asking for the signatures, and that they are usually the ones who are most excited. So they're the ones we're playing for out there. Now, Tess, I'll come to you now, but as a woman with a disability, you face both the gender barriers and obvious stereotypes, which speaks for the importance of an intersectional approach. And for those who are unaware, intersectionality is a theory that different aspects of a person's identity, such as gender, race, class, and disability, interact to create unique experiences of discrimination and privilege for everyone. So for us, and as Beck and Karina have mentioned, our barriers to sport would be quite different. So Tess, I'd love to know what has helped you feel supported on your own terms, and how does that help, and how can sporting organisations make sure women with a disability are not left behind when the programs or funding decisions are made?
Yeah, it's a really intersectionality, I think. I think people overcomplicate intersectionality when it comes to applying it to everyday life. I think the intersectionality means that textbook approaches to things are probably not going to be the most effective or successful way of getting, the most successful outcome. So what does that actually mean? That actually means that we need to be thinking about people on an individual basis. And I think that we could all agree that if we're treating everyone like an individual and supporting everyone on an individual basis, whether they are at their local cricket club or playing for Australia, I think that the success will come with that. We don't need to. The outcomes will be better, because the reality is that every woman in this world is different and feels and the support that they need to be at their best and feel included is slightly different, and that's the same with people with a disability as well. So a really great example of this, which I hadn't really thought about until I started representing Australia in sport, and going to places overseas where I hadn't been before, and where my guide dog could not come with me, and traveling with people who I didn't know super well, was that when an athlete's overseas, an athlete with disability will need some type of support. And what that support looks like is fairly straightforward when their coach is there. But I think, and their coach is intimately familiar with that. But a lot of the time, that isn't the case. And I think it's something that's really opened my eyes that that sporting organisations don't always have a policy and don't always have a process to go through. And a lot of the time, the support ends up coming out of the athlete's funding or the athlete's own pocket. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. I think actually there was a grant a couple of weeks ago which got announced for Paralympic athletes working towards LA 2028 to bring support workers to competitions, their own support workers that they're familiar with, and these types of things, so that they can perform at and control as much of the environment as possible. So that's one example when it comes to intersectionality and thinking about how to apply that to every the kind of everyday. I think another thing to think about is when we're talking about women with disabilities is that disabilities can be really severe, and they can also be quite moderate and just because someone has a diagnosis doesn't mean that their day-to-day is easier or harder than other people. So think about someone who has acquired their disability at 25 versus someone who has had that disability since birth. Think about someone who is totally blind versus has 10% vision. Someone who is in a wheelchair versus someone who has a missing hand, and these are all kind of nuances that I think we're only really starting to grapple with and have the resources to provide that individualized support. When it comes to what I think for me, support looks like in an ideal world, me being able to choose. So what sport I play, at what level, whether that's participation or representative. A lot of we're seeing right now that as soon as someone has talent in the disability space or was a talented athlete and then had an accident, all of a sudden the national sporting bodies come knocking. And in a way that's really great, but are they asking those, sometimes just participating in a sport might be what someone is after. Sometimes they do just want to jump in. So thinking about that and then defining success on my own terms. So deciding what I want to achieve and then working towards that is really important for me. So after COVID, I started rowing and I had a local rowing club, 20 minutes walk from my house, and I just emailed them and said, hey, I've looked at your Learn to Row course, and I'm really interested in just giving rowing a go. I've never rowed before. My family was a kayaking family. I'd never even been in a rowboat. And I said, I don't even know what adaptions I would need, if I'm completely honest. And I just emailed them with all of that, and someone called me and said, you know what? Yep, absolutely. I'll teach you to row after our normal Learn to Row on a Saturday morning. And it was great. And I didn't want to represent Australia. I just wanted to learn how to row and see how it went and participate in some regattas. And I did that. And I had choice over all of that the whole time. And yeah, I think that's a really good example of, for me, in an ideal world, what sport looks like. And in terms of women with disabilities not being left behind, I think there's lots of high performance money out there now, but I think we can't just expect people with disabilities and their families to fund up until they're a high performance athlete on government funding. I think growing these sports and growing the opportunities so that people with disabilities know that it exists, and that means investing in the youth.
No, that's incredible, Tess, and you've fed it in beautifully for our next question and touching on about how people can take things back to their community, like just being understanding to an individual's needs, and even understanding that they might not want to make it to the Olympics. They just want to learn how to row. They just want the ability to try and empower that decision yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I will throw to Beck and Karina in a second, but this will just be a little quick fire question here. And Tess, feel free to jump in again afterwards. But an example that we're looking for is something that someone who might be listening today could take away to do within their communities. Maybe something that has happened or has been part of your journey that has actually helped you in your pathway and feeling included in succeeding, or something that a coach or a friend or even just an administrator could take back and empower female athletes to succeed. Karina, you're up.
Ready to go. Keep showing up. That's probably the big one. We had a coach, an Australian Jillaroo coach, Brad Donald, and he started in the women's game maybe 8 years ago. And he was just sort of he was in the men's space, and then his manager was like, oh, can you go and coach the women, which he wasn't that keen for. And then when he came into the space and realized how passionate we were and, were thirsty for knowledge and like little sponges, he just became so invested in the game. And so we had a big tournament, and then he said when the tournament finished, he asked Karen Murphy, who's the current coach for the Titans, and she's played the highest levels, and he asked her, oh, what else could I do for the game? And she said, you can show up again next year, because we're so used to just people, taking a go and then, moving on. And yeah, he took it to the next level and invested, decade into the women's game. And really, he was instrumental in getting NRLW introduced in 2018. So I guess that keep showing up, bring your families to the games, buy the merch, volunteer at your local community, do a coaching course, sponsor a team if you've got got a business behind you, and I guess be a positive voice. If you do hear anyone talking negative about the games, like, can you put a positive spin on it, and just try and change people's mindsets? But although I think it is definitely moving in the right direction, so I don't hear as much anymore. But yeah, it takes all of us to get behind it and change the narrative.
No, I love that. They keep showing up, and then the positive voice probably behind closed doors as well. Obviously, if you've got a platform to share it, that's great. But it's the little comments at the pub and the little comments in the side that they're the ones that need to be nipped in the butt.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, that's great. Beck, I feel like you might have a similar story with a coach.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess with what Karina sort of mentioned as well, like the sort of high level stuff. Yeah, buy membership, put your money where your mouth is, buy tickets to a game, buy women's sport. But we are in a cost of living crisis, so if you don't have that, watch it on TV, listen to it on radio, listen to a women's sports podcast and share it. Use your social media for good. Direct your likes and your reshares and your reposts about women's sport. Show the powers high to be that women's sport shouldn't just be valued financially. It should be valued from a societal point of view in terms of the attitudes and perceptions of women. But I guess in terms of one takeaway for people involved in the local clubs and communities, use the words, I love watching you play, to a young girl. Make them feel safe, welcome and accepted, and encourage them to keep going. But just by saying, I love watching you play, it could have a real impact on them.
That's beautiful. And Tess, did you have a quick takeaway? I know you mentioned it, you summed up beautifully before, but if you had another point.
Yeah, I think listen. I think so for national sporting organisations or large sporting organisations, that means putting lived experience structures into your processes in everything that you do, and that goes for women, that goes for making sure that people with disability are part of that, multicultural communities are part of that, LGBTQI, and then for everyday people who are more on that kind of connecting with the athletes, listening and because they are the experts in what they need. And I think that's really the most important thing, listening, because that's how people feel included when they listen to.
Thank you, Tess. No, that's great. Now, thank you to all of our panelists today. It's amazing to hear from all of you, some very different perspectives there, and thank you so much for joining us all. We're going to move on to our second panel now, which will be hosted by Harriet. So I will hand you over, and thank you, Rebekah, Tess, and Karina. You guys are great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so thanks, Jade. Hi, everyone. My name's Harriet, and I currently play for Carlton in the AFLW. I've been playing the AFLW since its inception, so 10 seasons now. And like Jade, I'm also a member of the Our Watch Changemakers program. I'm really passionate about women in sport and providing a space for women and all people to thrive. I really loved hearing from Beck, or my friend Spaggers. Not sure about the new nickname though. Karina and Tess, and I want to thank them for sharing their insights, both the barriers that they've faced, but within their fields and their various fields, but also the positive experiences they've had. And I'm really hoping that our listeners today have been able to take away some tangible things from their conversations. In this next panel, we're going to explore the systems and the structures that create safer and more inclusive and equitable sporting environments, especially for women and girls. So we've got three brilliant panelists that I will introduce you to. They all bring very different but equally powerful perspectives. So I'll give them a brief introduction and then we'll get straight into it. First of all, I'd like to introduce Kim Stevens, who has more than 25 years experience in community, state and national sport. She's a senior legal professional, strategy and governance consultant, but is a passionate rugby union fan. And she's even joining us today from the United Kingdom, where she's travelled for the Women's World Cup. She is the Deputy President of the Adelaide University and President of Adelaide University Rugby Club, but has also held leadership roles across Rugby Australia, Rugby South Australia, Softball South Australia, and other sports. So thank you, Kim. We're also joined today by Shannon Jennings. Shannon is a national level basketball referee who works across the NBL and WNBL, the highest men's and women's basketball leagues in Australia. Thank you, Shannon. And we're joined by Rebekah Yeow, the True Sport Project Officer in Sport West, the peak industry body for sport in Western Australia. Sport West have over 130 members and work with over 5,000 sporting clubs. Rebekah's role focuses on their True Sport framework, which supports athletes, coaches, and organisations to promote fair play and the fostering of positive environments. This includes their Respectful Relationships initiative that empowers sports settings to play a proactive role in preventing family and domestic violence. So welcome to our three guests, three panelists. And as you've heard, we've got a really wide variety of sort of perspectives that we're going to be able to touch on today. Before I throw the hard-hitting questions at you, I'll start you off on an easier one. I'd just love to learn a bit more about your journey into sport. And I'd love if you could share with us why you got into sport in the first place and maybe some of those initial experiences and what they were like. So I'll start with you, Kim, all the way from the UK.
Yes, you'll have to excuse me if I'm a bit of a zombie. It's 4 a.m. here and I'm propped up in the reception area of my hotel because I didn't want to bother my my roommate. I am not a particularly naturally sporty person, unlike the previous panel who are wall-to-wall talent. I am very much of a genetic disposition to sit. And my mother, as a Chinese woman, was very keen on me studying a lot. So I didn't really find sport until I was an adult and couldn't be sort of bullied inside anymore. And I started playing touch football with the law firm I was working with at the time as a social employees program. And after the summer season, in which I've got to say I was pretty bad, I had enjoyed it so much that I was looking for something to do in winter because it didn't continue into the winter touch competition. And one of the girls who had played rugby union for my local club and said, you should come and do that. So I did, and the difference between social and club sport blew me away, and the sudden embracing community and family was something that I hadn't really ever experienced within my own family or at school. And I never looked back. And unlike, again, your previous talented panellists, I had to work really, really, really hard just to be mediocre. But that was something of enormous value to me. Every skill that I won was hard won and I was very proud of. But it became obvious pretty quickly that the contribution I was going to make to the game was going to be administrative rather than on the field, that was going to be just for me. And that was going on 30 years ago. And as you said, I've found my way one way or the other into various administrative and leadership and governance roles across the sport and other sports since, and it continues to pay back on a daily basis to the point that I'm now following the Women's Rugby World Cup around England and talking to you guys at 4 a.m.
Thanks for sharing, Kim. I think you've been very modest maybe about your talents, but we appreciate you being here today. Shannon, I'd love to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I was pretty lucky that both my parents were really sporty growing up, so it was natural for us to play a bit of footy on the nature strip and cricket and basketball in the backyard. And basketball was what I enjoyed the most out of all the sports that we tried, and I really enjoyed racing cars, off-road cars with my dad as well. But basketball is, I guess, through my teenage years, what kept me out of trouble. And I started reffing when I was 12. Mum thought it would be a good idea for me to earn some pocket money, whilst my younger brother was playing, so I could buy some lollies and stuff. And then I ended up just sticking with it because I realized I liked it better than playing, probably because I was better at it and didn't foul out. I had a habit of fouling out every basketball game that I played. Whereas I could ref multiple games and not foul out and still get to be happy at the end. So I guess in those teenage years, yeah, it kept me out of trouble when I was going through high school, because I was either reffing every night after school and had tournaments on the weekend, and it just ended up being a community that embraced me through some rougher times. But now it's just something that I am really passionate about and really love still. So I feel really lucky to have found it when I was younger and still be in it now.
Thank you for sharing that, Shannon. I think you and I have similar foul-out experiences from our younger days of basketball, so we can relate there.
Yeah.
And Rebekah, what about your start to sport?
Yeah, pretty similar to Shannon's. Came from a pretty sporty family, played netball and basketball growing up, and just absolutely loved it. Loved the community, that environment that sport can bring. And one of my earliest memories of sport was watching the opening ceremony of the 2000 Sydney Olympics, and just being able to see all these athletes from around the world in one place and from different cultures and backgrounds, and just getting together to embrace sport and be there to compete for their country, I just thought was absolutely amazing. I guess in terms of working in sport now, I never thought I would be working in sport. I sort of came across it in year 12 when I was trying to navigate where my career would go, and stumbled across it at a university open day. One of my friends was like, I'm just going to check out this talk that a professor was giving. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll come along with you. And that completely just changed the trajectory of my career. And so yeah, went through university in sport, and now I found myself working as an administrator. So similar to Kim, I was never that talented to be able to compete out in the field. So administrating is sort of my strength. But yeah, I think what's kept me around and involved in sport is just that sense of community that it can create. And yeah, that's why I'm so passionate to be in this space now.
Great, thank you all. I know I'm really looking forward to hearing from all three of you, having experienced being in multiple clubs throughout especially my footy career. I know how important, good organisations and good people running good programs are. So I'm going to come back to you, Kim. So you've contributed a lot to rugby union in South Australia as a player and a leader, including as president of Adelaide Uni Rugby Club. And so I want to know from your experience, sort of a twofold question, but how important is club leadership in shaping inclusive and safe environments? And I guess especially in a male-dominated sport. And also, what does successful leadership look like in that space, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, we talk a lot about leadership, I think, in every part of society, and this is another limb of it. And there are all the phrases like a fish rots from the head, but there is a lot of truth to it, that if you are in a leadership position in any organisation, particularly in a community club, your voice, whether it should or not, counts for more and is more likely to be heard, both in an administrative sense by people making day-to-day decisions and going through sort of the operational reality of running a club, but also just by the broader membership. So in many ways, you have the power to define the narrative of the club, of the organisation. And that's an enormous responsibility, and it's one that you need to do very consciously. When we're talking about, inclusion and diversity, whether it's in the women's and girls space, or my club also has a gay and inclusive men's team, and the principles are similar. You have to be talking the talk and walking the walk all the time, and you can't step away from the hard decisions. You're either always on point or you never are, effectively. And it's you who really reinforces what's acceptable and what's not acceptable by your leadership, by your voice, by your modelling of appropriate behaviours. And then the step beneath that is obviously, and it's a much bigger question, through your organisational leadership, ensuring that the programs and facilities and systems are there. You can't just say it. You've got to make sure that the club can make good on the values that you speak. And some of that is micro stuff. So I mean, I can't remember who in the panel, but one of the wonderful athletes said that they'd showed up in a car and then come back the next day because the first day was a little bit too intimidating. One of the phrases that I use a lot, I hear a lot, is meet them in the car park. And I think that's part of leadership, is both literally and metaphorically meeting them in the car park. Is that if you're bringing people into the club, if you're trying to create a safe and welcoming space, it's not enough to just, hang a banner on the wall that says everyone's welcome here. You've actually got to reach out and bring them in, usher them in, hold their hand. You've got to meet the girls in the car park, because it is a big step over that, over that boundary line. I think successful leadership looks like courage, and it should. You will never have everybody on side. There will always be voices to the contrary, and in some ways that's healthy. So it needs to be healthy adult discussion and the appropriate drawing of boundaries. But I'm a chronic people pleaser, but you need to find the courage to know when to be an educator, when to be a friend, when to be a supporter, and when to be an advocate, and when to be a defender. And each of those hats will not always be the right hat in the moment. You don't shout people down every time, but every so often a firm voice is necessary. So I think successful leadership fundamentally is an exercise in courage and values, and living by your values and bringing your organisation with you, whether it's with stick or with carrot.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. I love that meet them in the car park. I think that's a really great sort of takeaway that our listeners today can go away and, immediately action. So thank you, Kim. Shannon, I'm going to throw to you now. Referees and umpires are absolutely the unsung heroes of our sports. I think without them, the game just doesn't happen. So I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your journey, I guess, into officiating. You've sort of told us how you got into sport and why you refereed too many fouls. It was a better option, but I'd love to sort of know how that pathway might differ for men and women, and what we can do, I guess, to better support female officials. I know in the AFLW space, we're seeing more and more female AFLW umpires, even in the AFL men's space too. So I'd love to know, what we can do to support the female officials out there and sort of create a space where we can encourage more of them to come on board and also to remain there once they get there.
I think it's really cool watching the AFL and AFLW now, knowing that there are so many more women out there, and that exposure, like we spoke about, like the panelists earlier spoke about. If you don't see it, you don't know that it's possible. I think for me, I didn't really know where my ceiling was going to be. There wasn't a lot of women over the history of basketball that have reffed at the highest of levels. We've had one woman ever referee the Olympics. We've had maybe 10 to 15 women referee in the NBL. We've had a lot of women that have had what it takes to make it there, but they haven't had the opportunities previously to get there, I think, because there have been some limiting beliefs and decisions earlier on that I think now are changing, which is really cool, which needs to change. And I think that's given me the opportunity to be able to push through and try and find where that ceiling is. I think, yeah, my pathway coming through was quite traditional in terms of the early days. We all kind of did the same things as junior refs going through. Sometimes I would get put on or appointed to a females grand final, and the boys would get appointed to the males grand final. And I didn't think much of that growing up as a kid, because, yeah, it just didn't really feel like a big deal to me at the time. But I think looking back, it would be important to note that, like, going forward, if you aim to get somewhere, you should be able to ref whatever final, because umpiring is, or refereeing is, genderless for me. It doesn't matter that I'm a girl. I can go and ref the men's league or whatever. And I think those behaviors and beliefs are changing now. Yeah. Yeah, to better support female officials, I think we just need to remind them that the ceiling doesn't exist and they can aim and go as far as what they wish, and that the community and the support system behind them needs to be really strong. We need to be able to nurture and support them, because I know that I am at times softer and don't need such a hard approach like my male refs get through their coaching. Sometimes I need a little bit more gentleness. But the sky is the limit for us. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I know I've got a niece at home who watches me play AFLW, but all she wants to do is be a referee or an umpire when she grows up. So I think that you can't be what you can't see thing is really real, and it's real across the sports space, the players, but also, the officials and the people in administration as well. So that's great. Thank you. Rebekah, I'll move on to your hard-hitting question now. So through your work at Sport West, you've got a bird's eye view of the sector, and you're currently involved in developing those respectful relationship programs that I spoke about before in Western Australia. Beyond participation, sport does have a huge role to play in promoting safety, inclusion, and gender equality. So I'd love to know what opportunities you see for sport to keep driving meaningful change in these areas in particular.
Yeah, thanks, Harriet. As you mentioned before, Sport West is the peak body for sport in Western Australia, and we have a unique opportunity to sort of influence our members. So yeah, we've got about 150 member organisations now, and they've all their underpinning clubs and communities down there as well. And we really see sport as being one of the most influential platforms to drive cultural and behavioural change, because it is so ingrained into the lives of many Australians. And so part of True Sport, we have a program called True Sport that supports sporting organisations in navigating some of the key off-field challenges that are facing the sector. So things like mental health and wellbeing, child safeguarding, sideline behaviour, and respect for relationships, as we mentioned before. And so the True Sport program really provides practical, ready-to-use resources, training opportunities to assist clubs and organisations that embed these initiatives into their everyday operations. So with respect for relationships, it works to promote that gender equality in sport and recreation through encouraging the meaningful involvement of women and girls in sport at all levels, and supporting organisations to implement appropriate responses to respond to incidents, whether it's disrespect, harassment, violence, that sort of thing, but also in supporting the participation of women and girls and getting them out on the park as well. And so to do this, it's crucial that clubs and sporting organisations have the tools and resources there that support them to be able to deliver programs and initiatives that support women and girls in sport. So that's where we come in as Sport West and True Sport, to provide those resources and upskilling supports for sport. So with respect for relationships, we've partnered with Starrick, who are a WA-based family and domestic violence support service, to co-design these workshops and resources that are tailored for sport. And yeah, I think it's really important that when we're providing resources and those sorts of things, that it's evidence-based, which is why our work with Starrick and Our Watch is so important. In terms of some practical examples that we've seen across sport to sort of foster that inclusion, safety, and equality, some simple things like starting with the basics, ensuring facilities meet the needs of all members. So we've seen sporting organisations and clubs apply for available funding, whether that's through government or other means, to upgrade change rooms and amenities to be more inclusive, especially for women and girls. Also embedding that lived experience into decision making, so having working groups of women or ensuring that women's voices are heard and represented on committees. It can provide that valuable insight to the barriers that can prevent female participation and involvement in sport, as well as inclusive programs that are designed to increase female participation, particularly in some traditionally male-dominated sports. It can help break down barriers and build confidence before transitioning into mainstream competition or activities. And then around, I guess, safety goes beyond the physical well-being. It's also about emotional and psychological safety too. So ensuring there's some respectful relationships education for club members, including committee members, volunteers, that sort of thing. It can be a powerful tool to shift culture and challenge some old ways of thinking and promote accountability within clubs as well. And as part of that, bringing in some updated policies and procedures like codes of conduct, complaint handling, and safeguarding protocols can really help ensure that inappropriate behaviour is addressed swiftly and fairly, and clubs are equipped to support members who may be experiencing, less than adequate behaviour. And around, I guess, gender equality, one of the ways that Sport West are contributing to this space here in WA is through our Women of Sport Emerging Leaders program. So that's designed to empower the next generation of female leaders in sport, particularly in the administration space. So the program equips women with skills and knowledge and the networks they need to thrive in senior leadership roles, and includes mentoring, workshops, and career development tools that they can carry into their future roles. And so the leadership and mentoring programs are really key to building gender equality within the sports administration, but we also sort of need the current leadership to actively recognise and tap emerging talent on the shoulder as well. Some women won't necessarily nominate themselves or see a program and say, oh, that's something that I'd like to be a part of. Sometimes it's like you need your manager or someone in your circle to say, hey, I've seen this opportunity and I think it's something that you should do. So yeah, really having some leaders investing in women in the workforce in sport through that professional development, including flexible working arrangements, for those that are parents, or providing those leadership pathways to help build a stronger and more diverse sector in sport as well. And I guess just encouraging those cross-sport relationships and networking that can build a sense of community. As we mentioned, sport is a great connector across different backgrounds and cultures and that sort of thing. And so when women in sport can connect across disciplines, they can share knowledge and support each other and strengthen their collective voice for change as well. So yeah, sport really does have that reach and can influence that cultural change, not just within clubs, but across communities. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Rebekah. That was, really interesting to hear. And I mean, we know how key education, support and resources, how important they are. They're the foundation for really successful programs and for creating environments that, can not only encourage women and girls to participate in sport, but to thrive in those programs. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And thank you to all three of you for taking on those questions and giving us sort of an insight into your field of practice. I am going to finish off with one final question. This is a bit more of a quick fire question, but the thought of this question is it's time to dream big. So if you had a magic wand and you could manifest one change to make sport safer, more inclusive and more equitable for women and girls, what would it be? I know that I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but wave your magic wand, Kim, and tell me what your one change would be, please.
For those of us who've been involved in coaching, I think a phrase we often hear is you can't do anything with a broken want to. So you can teach someone to catch, pass, tackle, you can run them until their cardio is great, but if they don't want to, you can't do a damn thing about it. And I think in some parts of sport, there is a broken want to when it comes to women's participation. I think one of the first panellists said that sometimes it's apathetic. It's not an active opposition. It's we're just not particularly motivated. So if I could wave my wand, it would be to increase the motivation of the people who aren't in this sort of meeting, conference, who aren't already committed to the progress of women's sport and women's participation. If I could wave a magic wand and increase their want to, I think that would make it an enormous difference. Just the fight against that reluctance, and it is actually doable. Title IX in the States won't give funding to universities for anything if they don't spend the same amount of money on women's sport as men's sport. So that their women's sport at a university level is really well funded, because Penn State, who spends however many 100 million on their footballers each year, have to spend it on some kind of women's sport as well, and it provides some equality there. The Shoot Shield, which is, for those who don't know, the premier club comp in Sydney and arguably in the country, a few years ago said you can't enter a team in the Shoot Shield unless you've got a women's team as well. So it's about providing some motivation for, frankly, the old blokes running the old blokes clubs to care about women's sport in the short term, where they might not otherwise, and in the belief that once they invest in us, they too will see the value of the product, and it will carry itself forward. So yeah, I'd be providing some big sticks and big carrots to fix the broken want-tos.
Great, thank you, Kim. Shannon, your magic wand, what would your one change be?
To increase individual self-belief. I think if you believe in yourself, then you're capable of doing whatever you see fit. And then if you believe in yourself, then you're going to believe in other people as well, and you can bring them up with you. I think that would be the biggest thing that I can change or want to change.
Yeah, amazing. Great. And Rebekah, we'll finish off with you and your one change.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess coming from a sports administrator's sort of perspective, I'd love to see a sporting ecosystem where safety, inclusion, and equity are non-negotiable. Every sport, club, coach, committee member, volunteer is equipped or has access to the available tools and mindset to foster an inclusive practice to ensure any member of the community feels safe and welcome to be involved and participate in sport. So yeah, I'd love to see sport become a place where it's not just a goal, it's the norm, and where sport truly reflects the communities where each club is located.
Great. I wish I had a magic wand where I could grant all your 3 wishes, but I mean, I think conversations like the ones we've had here today with our 3 athletes and with you 3 here has been, a really great stepping stone where we can take hopefully some actionable things away from this, and our listeners can go back to whatever field they're in and use some of the tools that we've talked about today. So that is all we have time for, but I want to say, a really big thank you for sharing your stories and your insights from leadership and your officiating to sector-wide change. There's a lot for us to take away, as I've said. Before you leave the meeting, there is a link that's being shared in the chat for a post-webinar survey, and we'd really appreciate all feedback so that we can continue to plan for future events. And the feedback really does help us, give the people that are listening what they want to hear, and make sure that we're leaving these sorts of webinars with actionable change-making things that we can put into place in our particular sectors. So thank you again for joining us, and let's keep the momentum going. So whether that's in your club, in your program, or in the conversations that you're having on a day-to-day basis, let's just keep the momentum flowing. And thank you.